Have you ever told yourself, I will really start working on my inner life when I am not so busy? Have you noticed how that not so busy day never actually arrives, while your stress, confusion, and regrets quietly keep growing in the background? Welcome back to the channel, my friend. I am here to walk with you through one of the most subtle but powerful habits that shapes destiny, happiness, and even the direction of your future lives, the habit of postponing your awakening. The original text we are expanding from points straight at this strange contradiction in the human heart. On the one hand, we say we want freedom from suffering. We long for peace, clarity, and wisdom. On the other hand, when it comes time to actually sit down, to reflect, to practice, to face ourselves honestly, we say, not today. I am too tired. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe when this project ends. Maybe when I retire. We say we want to get out of the burning house, yet we keep telling ourselves, I will look for the exit later. We say life is painful, yet we delay the very work that could transform that pain into understanding. This is not a moral failure or a sign that you are uniquely lazy. It is a deep habit woven into the human mind, a mixture of fear, attachment, and ignorance about what real practice actually is. In this long conversation, let us look gently but honestly at this habit. We will explore why your mind keeps saying later, how this later is not neutral but full of karmic power, and how you can begin practicing right in the middle of your noisy, messy, demanding life instead of waiting for a perfect day that never comes. Along the way, we will tell stories of ordinary people whose later almost became never, and how a small shift in one moment of awareness changed the direction of their destiny. If you are watching this while thinking, I am too tired to practice properly, I just want to relax, then this video is especially for you. You might discover that the very feeling of exhaustion and confusion you are hoping to escape is exactly the right doorway into awakening. Imagine a man in his 40s, let us call him David. For years he has been telling friends, I am really interested in spiritual practice. When the company stabilizes, I will have more time to meditate and study. At first, the company is a small startup. He says he must devote all his energy to growing it. A few years later, the company has grown. But now he says, right now is not a good time. The market is unstable. Once this phase passes, then I can relax and practice. Years pass. There is always a reason. A big client, an economic crisis, a new expansion, an important merger. Meanwhile, his body is aging. His parents are becoming frail. His children are growing up. Every year, he says the same sentence when things are more stable. I will really practice. One night, he comes home late as usual, shoulders stiff, eyes burning from screens and meetings. As he opens the door, his teenage daughter glances up from her homework and says without malice, just with simple observation, Dad, you are always so busy. When I was little you said you were busy. And now I am almost grown and you are still always busy. Will there ever be a day when you are not busy? The question hits him like a bell in a silent hall. He laughs awkwardly and says, of course, things will calm down. But inside, something trembles. When exactly did he start living like this? Rushing from one task to another, postponing everything that matters most to some vague future day? Later that night, the house is quiet. He sits alone in the living room, phone in his hand, scrolling numbly. That sentence echoes in his mind, you are always so busy. He realizes He has said the same sentence to himself about practice that he has said about family, health, and friendship. I will give more time to it when I am not so busy. But that day has not come, and the habit of postponement has become his entire way of life. Here is the painful but liberating truth. Life will almost never present you with a perfect, open, peaceful month, labeled for spiritual practice only. The idea that one day you will be less busy is, for most people, an illusion. When one problem ends, another appears. When one responsibility is completed, a new one arises. The shape of your tasks may change, but the mind that says later usually stays the same. This is why wisdom traditions insist that real practice must happen inside the life you are actually living, not in some imaginary future life where you have no responsibilities, no noise, no tiredness. Waiting for the perfect environment is itself a form of delusion. It is like a person standing in the rain, refusing to open their umbrella because they are waiting for the rain to stop before they start staying dry. Let us look more closely at this habit of later. On the surface, it sounds harmless. After all, you are not saying you will never practice. You are just saying not now. But not now repeated enough times becomes not in this life. If you delay every day, one day life will decide there are no more days to delay. Why do we postpone the very thing that could free us from suffering? There are several layers. One layer is ignorance. Many people think spiritual practice is just another task on the to-do list, something you do once you have cleared enough space. They imagine it as a large block of time seated in stillness, eyes closed, in a perfectly quiet environment. If you believe practice is only valid when everything is silent and restful, then of course you will feel that real practice is impossible during a busy work week or while raising children. You will say, "I do not want to do it casually. I will wait until I can do it properly." But this belief itself is mistaken. Practice is not limited to formal sessions. Formal meditation, chanting, or study are precious, but they are like sharpening the sword. The real combat happens in the battlefield of daily life, in how you speak when you are irritated, how you breathe when you are anxious, how you respond when someone disappoints you. Another layer is fear. True practice means looking directly at your own mind. It means seeing your habits of anger, jealousy, greed, and confusion as they are, not as you would like them to be. Many people unconsciously feel, "I am already exhausted. I do not want to look at my pain closely. It will hurt more. I would rather distract myself with entertainment, work, or social media." So they use "I am busy" as a shield. Underneath that shield is often the thought, "I am afraid of facing myself." Then there is attachment. A part of us knows very well that if we deepen our practice, some of our current pleasures will lose their flavor. Certain habits of gossip, certain indulgent fantasies, certain familiar dramas will no longer feel attractive. A part of the ego senses this and resists. It whispers, "If you awaken, you will have to let go of these sweet poisons. Do you really want that? Better to delay. Enjoy them a little longer." Of course, there is also simple inertia. The mind is used to running on certain tracks. The track called scroll phone, the track called work more, the track called complain silently but change nothing. To step off the tracks and sit quietly, even for 10 minutes, feels strangely difficult. So we tell ourselves stories about waiting for the right mood, the right energy, the right time. It is important to see that every later is not just a neutral pause. It is a seed planted in the field of your mind. When you say, "I will practice later," and then you do not, You quietly train your mind to disconnect intention from action. You teach yourself that the voice that says, "I want to awaken," is not trustworthy. Over time, you may start to feel that your own vows are hollow. This weakens your confidence and makes it even harder to start. On the other hand, every small moment when you actually practice, even when tired, even when busy, is also a seed. When you sit for 5 minutes instead of scrolling, when you choose to breathe and reflect instead of snapping in anger, when you silently recite a verse while waiting in a line, you are telling your mind, "My vow matters. I may be busy, but I will not completely abandon my path." These tiny seeds, repeated again and again, grow into a strong tree of discipline and trust in yourself. Let us move from theory to story again. Consider a young woman. Let us call her Lisa. She has a demanding job in the city and elderly parents in another town. Between work, travel, and caretaking, she often feels like a rope pulled into directions. She has been drawn to teachings on awakening uncompassion for a long time. She has even bought books and saved online talks to watch later. But every evening she comes home exhausted, throws herself on the couch, and tells herself, "My mind is too tired to absorb anything deep. Let me relax first. On the weekend, I will really study." Weekend comes. There are errands, social obligations, cleaning, laundry. She feels guilty that she has not called a friend in a long time. She forces herself to go to a gathering, even though inside she longs for quiet. On Sunday night, she sits in front of the computer, looks at the list of talks she saved, and thinks, "I do not want to waste them by watching them when tired. Next weekend, I will watch them with full attention." Weeks turn into months. Each week she tells herself the same sentence, "I will practice when I am less busy." Meanwhile, her anxiety gets worse, not better. She keeps trying to squeeze comfort out of entertainment and small treats, but the comfort fades quickly. One day, while commuting on the train, she accidentally hits play on one of the talks she saved. At first, she considers pausing it. "I am on the train. It is noisy. I cannot concentrate properly," she thinks, but something in her is desperate, so she leaves it running. The teacher's voice comes through her headphones. "You say you are too busy to practice, but in truth, you are too busy not to practice. The more tangled your life, the more urgently we need a clear, awake mind." Those words pierce her like an arrow. Too busy not to practice. She realizes that she has been waiting for spiritual work to feel easy and convenient. Like watching a light show, she has been insisting on a perfect setting. But her actual life is this: a crowded train, a tired body, a mind full of worry. If the teachings cannot enter here, where else will they enter? From that day, she makes a new vow. She does not promise to meditate for an hour every day. She knows that kind of resolution, while noble, will probably break quickly under her current conditions. Instead, she promises herself something small but radical every day. She will give at least 10 minutes to conscious practice, no matter what. Sometimes it is 5 minutes of sitting in silence before bed, watching her breath. Sometimes it is silently reciting a short verse on compassion during lunch break. Sometimes it is pausing for 3 conscious breaths before answering an email that triggers irritation. At first, these 10 minutes feel insignificant compared to the vast ocean of her business. But slowly, something shifts. She begins to experience that practice is not a hobby. It is a way of inhabiting her own life. It is not separate from the workday, from taking care of her parents, from commuting. It is the intention she brings into all those activities. Over time, she notices that on days when she keeps her small vow, Even if everything outside is chaotic, something in her remains more stable. And on days when she forgets and gets swept away by urgency, she feels like a leaf tossed endlessly by storms. The contrast strengthens her resolve. This is how delayed dreams become lived reality, not through waiting for a grand opening of free time, but through modest, consistent decisions in the middle of ordinary days. Let us look at another angle: the illusion that spiritual practice is something you can make up later. People often think, right now I must focus on making money, building my career, raising my children. When I am old and retired, I will have time to reflect and practice. Then I will catch up. There are two problems with this. One is that there is no guarantee you will live to that age in good health. We all know this logically, but the mind has a secret assumption: other people get sick and die. I have time. This assumption is so strong that even people in their 70s sometimes still say, I will seriously practice in a few years when things calm down. The second problem is that habits harden with age. If you spend decades training your mind to chase outward things and ignore inward cultivation, do not imagine that when your schedule opens up, your mind will suddenly become calm and interested in wisdom. More likely, it will continue to chase distraction out of sheer habit. Think of a river that has flowed in one direction for a long time. The longer it runs in that channel, the deeper the channel becomes. To redirect the river later requires much more effort than if you had gently guided it earlier. Your mind is like that river. Every day you either deepen the channel of later or you begin to carve a new channel of now. To make this clearer, imagine an elderly man, retired after a life of ceaseless work. For 40 years he told himself, I am working hard now so that I can enjoy peace later. Now the later has arrived. He has money in the bank and time on his hands. But peace does not automatically appear. His body is weaker, his sleep is lighter, and old regrets visit him in the quiet hours. He tries to meditate, but his mind is restless. He realizes that although he has time, he has never learned how to be alone with himself. Stillness frightens him. He turns on the television to drown the unease. Days pass in a blur of trivial distractions. One afternoon, he meets an old friend who has been practicing for decades, even during her busiest years. She worked, raised children, cared for aging parents, and yet somehow always gave some space to revisiting her mind through reflection, prayer, or meditation. Now, in old age, her body is also frail, but her eyes are bright. She enjoys conversation, but she is also comfortable with silence. She tells him, when I was busy, I practiced in the middle of laundry, in small pauses at work, in the moments when I was about to explode with anger. Practice helped me not burn out completely. Now that my schedule is gentle, those decades of training are bearing fruit. My mind knows how to settle, how to rest. He hears this and feels a mixture of admiration and sorrow. He sees clearly, perhaps for the first time, that postponement has a cost. It is not about guilt or blame. It is simply cause and effect. What you train grows. What you neglect withers. The good news is that it is never too late to begin where you are. The river may have dug itself a deep channel, but even now you can gently start shifting its course. You may not completely change its path in this life, but you can absolutely influence its direction, and that will affect everything that comes after. Now let us turn inward again and ask, how can you, in practical terms, stop postponing and start practicing now, today, in the exact life you have? First, you can remember that practice is not a separate activity. It is ultimately a way of being. Formal practices are important because they train your attention and deepen your insight. But the deeper meaning of practice is to bring awareness, compassion, and wisdom into every moment. When you are washing dishes, your mind can be scattered in complaints and fantasies, or it can be present with the warm water, the movement of your hands, the simple fact that you are alive in this moment. One way strengthens the habit of distraction and dissatisfaction. The other strengthens the habit of presence and gratitude. The dishes are the same. Your state of mind is different. When you are working, you can't treat every task as a burden you must finish so that you can finally rest. Or you can treat each task as an opportunity to cultivate patience, focus, and care. The emails are the same. The inner attitude changes everything. When you are with your family, you can be physically present but mentally absent, thinking of your phone, your work, your worries. Or you can really listen, really look into their faces, really feel the preciousness of the time you have with them. The conversation may last only a few minutes, but if you are truly present, those minutes are filled with meaning. This is not romanticism. This is the essence of making practice real. Second, you can examine honestly what you are calling busy. Some business is unavoidable. You need to work to support yourself. You need to care for children or elders. You have responsibilities that cannot be abandoned. But if you look closely, you will often find that a large portion of your busy time is made of habits that are not truly necessary. How much time do you spend scrolling through your phone, watching one more episode, reading arguments online that leave you agitated but do not change anything? How much time do you spend replaying past conversations in your head, imagining future disasters, worrying about things you cannot control? If you gently reclaim even a small fraction of that time and energy and redirect it toward conscious practice, you will discover that you are not as too busy as you thought. The problem was not only time, it was attention lost in mechanical patterns. Third, you can make one promise to yourself: never to abandon your aspiration completely. There will be days when you feel lazy, discouraged, or overwhelmed. There will be times when you fall back into old habits. That is normal. The crucial thing is that you come back. You may fall into forgetfulness 100 times, but you can wake up 101 times. Every time you remember, I wanted to live more awake, and then actually do something, however small, to honor that wish, you strengthen your destiny in the direction of awakening. Let us talk about destiny for a moment. Many people speak about fate as if it were a fixed script, written somewhere beyond their reach. But from the perspective of cause and effect, destiny is the ripening of the seeds you plant through your intentions, words, and actions. It is not a rigid prism, but a flexible pattern. Some parts are easier to change, some are harder, but nothing about your mental habits is absolutely fixed. When you choose to delay your inner work, you create a destiny of repetition. The same conflicts, the same mistakes, the same regrets, cycling again and again. You may change jobs, partners, cities, but the same internal patterns follow you. When you begin to practice now, you initiate a different destiny. It may not transform everything overnight, but step by step, it alters the trajectory of your heart. Consider how a plane changes its destination. If it shifts its course by just a few degrees early in the flight, it ends up in a completely different country. In the same way, a small shift in how you live your days can, over years, lead to a completely different life. Now I want to speak directly to something you might be feeling. As you listen, you might think, I know all this. I know I should practice now, not later. But knowing does not make it easier. I still feel tired. I still feel unmotivated. I still feel like practice is heavy. If that is your experience, you are not alone. Many people carry an image of practice as a kind of punishment, a duty they must endure to become a better person. If your relationship to practice is dominated by pressure and guilt, of course, you will want to delay it. What if instead you saw practice as an act of kindness to yourself, as a way of giving your overworked mind and heart a real rest, deeper than any entertainment can offer? Imagine you had a dear friend who was constantly stressed, constantly running, constantly worrying. If you truly love them, would you say, "Keep running, I will help you add more tasks"? Or would you gently invite them to sit down, breathe, and remember that they do not need to carry the whole world alone? Your own heart is that friend. When you practice, you are not punishing yourself. You are sitting down inside your own life and saying, "I see that you are tired. Let us breathe. Let us see more clearly. Let us stop running in circles for a moment." When you approach practice in the Spirit, it becomes less of a burden and more of a refuge. It becomes something you long for, not something you postpone. Instead of thinking, "I have to meditate," you begin to feel, "I get to rest in awareness for a while." Now let us weave everything together and speak about resonance and shared experience. You might recognize yourself in one of these stories. Perhaps you have spent years saying, "When I graduate, when my career stabilizes, when the children grow up, when I pay off the mortgage, when I retire, then I will really practice." Perhaps you have felt the subtle guilt of knowing this pattern and yet repeating it. I invite you to see that guilt is not helpful. What matters is what you choose now. The past postponements are already seeds that have sprouted. There is no need to torture yourself about them. The question is, what seeds will you plant today? Many people who walk the path have experienced a turning point similar to the ones in our stories. Sometimes it comes through a question from a child, sometimes through a health scare, sometimes through the death of a loved one, sometimes through a breakdown in mental health. In those moments, the illusion of endless time is shattered. You realize, my life is not a rehearsal. This is it. If I do not start living more consciously now, when will I? That realization can be terrifying, but it is also the doorway to deep courage. You might recall a time when you felt this urgency, when you promised yourself you would change, but then slowly slid back into old patterns. If so, know that this, too, is part of the learning. Deep habits are not overturned in one burst of inspiration. They are transformed through steady, patient, sometimes boring repetition of new choices. If you wish, you can make today a new kind of turning point, not by promising some grand future achievement, but by gently deciding that from this day forward, you will no longer completely delay your inner work. You may still have busy days. You may still feel tired, but you will not let an entire week, month, or year pass without any conscious practice. This is not about becoming perfect. It is about honoring your own longing for wisdom, compassion, and freedom. That longing is not a luxury. It is the most truthful part of you. As we come to the end of this extended reflection, let us gather the essence in simple language. You do not need to wait for your life to be less busy to walk the path of awakening. In fact, the very business, chaos, and pressure you are experiencing are the exact materials you can use to cultivate awareness, patience, and insight. Every time you say later, you strengthen the habit of postponement. Every time you say now, even in a small way, you strengthen the habit of presence. Real practice is not separate from your job. Your family, your household chores, your commutes, your frustrations. It is hidden in the way you breathe when stressed, the way you speak when angry, the way you listen when someone is in pain, the way you choose to respond when your old habits are triggered. You are not being asked to become a saint overnight. You are simply being invited to take one step closer to your own heart today, and then another step tomorrow, and another the next day. Over time, those steps form a path. That path becomes your destiny. Before you go, I would love to hear from you. Have you ever caught yourself saying, "I will really work on myself when I am less busy"? What was happening in your life then? Did something ever shake you awake and make you realize that later might never come? If you feel comfortable sharing, your experience could deeply encourage someone else who is stuck in the same pattern. If this video spoke to you, if it reminded you of your own longing to live more awake and less on autopilot, I invite you to support this channel. You can subscribe, like this video, leave a comment about what part touched you most, or even consider joining as a member to help us keep creating these long, in-depth explorations. Every gesture of support helps us continue the work of bringing wisdom, compassion, and practical tools into everyday life. Most importantly, after you close this video, do not just nod and move on. Take one small action today that honors your path. Sit quietly for a few minutes. Breathe consciously while doing something ordinary. Speak a little more gently to someone you usually snap at. Offer a sincere wish for the well-being of all beings before you sleep. In that small action, later begins to dissolve and now begins to shine. There are moments when you see something and your heart simply whispers, "This one is meant for me." Bracelet carries more than beads. It carries intention, protection, and quiet strength. Something to guide your thoughts and keep your spirit steady. If you felt that gentle pull toward any of the bracelets shown, the purchase link is waiting in the description, and the full collection is displayed on our channel store. Follow your intuition. It rarely leads you wrong.